Ambedkarism, Marxism, liberalism, Dravidianism, feminism, Gandhiism. What role are these great big isms of the 20th century playing in the 21st century? What relevance do they have today?
Have a tree.
I'm an atheist in the same way as I'm an leprechaun.
Why have there been casteism existing in the country still today?
Feminism, by definition, is the belief that men and women should have equal
So the
rights.
nature of the system is to be as mean and rotten as you can, to try to maximize profit.
I'm Sudipto Mondal, and welcome to this episode of What's Your Ism?
Hello and welcome to a new episode of What's Your Ism? If you're wondering where is Sudipto Mondal, the host of the show, well, Sudipto is very much in the studio, but there's been a change here. We thought, why not put Sudipto on the hot seat since he's been asking everyone else through the year, what's your ism? The end of the year, Sudipto can answer that question, what's your ism? So welcome, Sudipto, to your show, What's Your Ism?
Thanks, Dhanya. And I will get into what's my ism and all of that, of course. But, you know, one of the things I wanted to tell all of the people who are following the show is that we are trying to generate funds for great journalism. And I think the year end is a great time to do that, to ask people to pass the hat around for you to be generous. And I think we're going to give you another reason to pay us, which is that the kind of people for whom you pay money and go just to go watch them, I'm trying to get some of those people over here. So pay us that money because they're going to be on this show very soon for the year-ender special.
Okay, so whenever I watch your show, I wonder, why doesn't Sudipto first ask, what is your ism to his guests? So I'm going to ask you that as a first question. What is your ism, Sudipto?
Well, that's exactly the reason why I don't ask people, because I kind of build towards it, because I think suddenly when you're asked that question, I don't know. But when you ask that question, and this is, yes, a prepared answer. So I'm going to borrow one of these things that my friend uses as his, the tag that goes along with the ID, saying, I won't die for my beliefs, for I may change them. And one thing I can say, and I think it's a result of the fact that I'm a journalist, that as things have developed, I can say with some amount of, I suppose, pride only, that I've been flexible enough to evolve and change my views based on the circumstances, based on facts, how they develop and things like that. So, yeah.
That's a cop-out. Basically,
cop-out.
You don't want to say what is your ism.
Well, okay. Definitely, I mean, if you know me, Ambedkar is a very big figure in how I use Ambedkar as a lens, as something which allows me to interpret the world. And, close second would be, it's a close call between the feminists who have been introduced to and Marx. And I think Marxism and feminism, and I must, acknowledge the contribution of, different Marxist groups, including the mainstream ones like CPM, CPI, and many others, in helping me understand my ism. And definitely women, feminists. You are one of them. Thanks to you and Pooja, a lot of my thoughts and the way I interpret things have evolved. The way I look at gender, I've learned a lot from you and Pooja. Kanaki, my ex, these are people who've contributed a great deal to my mom.
So you know what the Google search today is going to be, right? Sudipto Mondal, ex Kanaki.
Yeah, but it's true. I mean, I think, I must give credit to my mother, okay, Dr. Monica Ghosh. And she was one of these early feminists in the 80s. You can imagine, right? This was an era in which women stepping out of the house, going to work was, frowned upon. And they had to, fight bigger battles back then. And I was witness to those battles, I owe it to her to allow me to sit in those spaces. Like she and her friends would be discussing how, there's a creep in the office, and they would have that discussion. And I still remember very clearly my mom's friends, telling me that, at home I'm called Mintu, saying, Mintu, you will not be this kind of man, right? And I think men, for one, need to be schooled because we are born animal and we need to be turned into human. And that process is still happening in my case. And these women have played a very big role in my evolution, so to speak, yeah.
Okay, so Mintu, the semi-human. I did not know this was your nickname. Definitely this will be publicized in the office, Mintu. So, to those watching, Sudipto is of course a colleague at the News Minute, but he's also an important figure in Indian journalism There are many reasons for that. He's of course worked in many organizations like the Hindu, the Hindustan Times, before and Al Jazeera before he decided to join the News Minute. My question to you, Sudipto, is you are someone who's always been talking about diversity in newsrooms, right? What is your take on why should the newsrooms be diverse in India, and how much has that pitch really worked?
Second part is obviously not a very encouraging thing to talk about. I mean, how much has it worked? You know as well as I do how much it has worked. We'll probably touch upon that a little, but why it is important is because of, for me personally, politically why it's important, I mean, we'll get into, but personally it's important to me because of how bored I was by the people who were commissioning me when I was a young reporter. You know, the fact that they were just coming out from these factories, you know, bricks in the wall, and they wanted stories of a certain kind. And I gathered pretty quickly that it's a result of where they come from, where they've been raised, and the fact that they're not able to rise above something to see something. And that makes things boring beyond anything else. You know, of course, there's the concept of social justice, you know, inclusivity. All of that is important, equity, and that is important. But from a storytelling point of view, I think diversity just adds texture, richness, color. Like, look at our office, no, Dhanya. I mean, I hope you'll second me here. Our Monday morning meetings, you know, the way we are able to diversify a topic. Let's not talk about diversification of people, of groups of people. Let's look at the diversity of ideas that come in, no, into our thing. And I dare say I have worked in premium publications, so-called very, you know, world-renowned and all of that. And I haven't seen this quality of discussion over ideas, over what stories should look like, what angles and all that. And I think that's what, no, proof of the pudding. How do you put it? Yeah.
No, but tell me something. Why did it become a very important mission for you to ensure that there is diversity in newsroom? Because I remember at one point you wrote that hard-hitting article on Al Jazeera for which a lot of Indian media were upset with you, especially the editors. But why did you make that sort of your mission?
See, the year I went to ACJ, I've been working on getting particularly Dalits and Adivasis into journalism since about 2007 and 8, which is when I passed out of the Asian College, and I would keep sending students to go study at ACJ and things like that. So that is something that was a result of a kind of a pact that I had with my two other Dalit classmates, Chitti Babu and Karthikeyan Damodaran, saying that, you know, once we pass out of here, we will try, this is a great institute, we will keep trying to encourage people to come and be here, be part of this experience. So that's something I've done as a default thing every year. But then I think after Rohit Vemula, things kind of exploded in my head a little bit, and I became a little, how do I put it, like a zealot about these things, saying that this has to happen now. And that sense of urgency, I think, to my mind came after Rohit Vemula, saying that this is now or never.
So we'll come back to that a little later. Now let's rewind a bit about Mintu's life, right? Why did you decide to become a journalist? You're born and brought up in Bengaluru.
So I didn't want to become a journalist. I wanted to become a radio jockey, Dhanya. So I was in this circuit in Bangalore's entertainment, event management, MCing, DJing, you know, voiceovers. That's what I used to do before I got into journalism. And I was trying to audition for a radio station. I'd done a little bit of a stint in All India Radio as a presenter. And I kept trying to audition for Radio City and all these things back then. I was not able to get in. And a friend of mine at that point told me about ACJ. And
Asian College of Journalism in Chennai. Yeah.
And that was the first time I heard the term development journalism. And we had just got a computer at home that time. And I went home and I Googled it and I saw this name pop up, P. Sainath and all that. I said, who's this guy? And then I read some of his reports and I said, this is development journalism. But then my thing was, okay, I might go and pick up something new, because I was always very excited to learn new things. But my thing was, okay, they have a radio course. So I was thinking I would go to ACJ, learn production, come back to Bangalore, audition once again. That was my thing. But when I went there, Sainath happened and Professor Kanchayalaya happened. And my mind was not the same again. I just, at the end of the year, coincidentally, I did get an offer from a radio station as an RJ, with a decent salary package, and I instead took up a position as a district reporter for, I can mention the amount, right? I think I should know.
Yeah.
About a little over 11,000 rupees.
This was which year?
2007. And of which some 5,000 something would go off for EMIs for the ACJ loan. And of that 11 or 12,000, 1,000 you had to claim as reimbursement and all that. That's how bad it was. But it was the most exciting thing I had ever done in my life.
So how did Sainath... No, before we go into that, let's think this is a radio audition. Give me an audition, 2 seconds of your sound.
Why do you think I never got that job?
But let's see how bad you were. Tell me. Good morning, Bengaluru. How do you do it?
Yeah. Good morning, Bengaluru. No, back then it was Bangalore.
Okay, tell me.
We were cooler then. Good morning, Bangalore. You're listening to whatever.
This was your audio test?
No, it was different, but I don't know. It must have been really bad. I didn't get in.
This was bad.
This was bad in itself. But luckily, I don't have to be much of a presenter. I just have to read and prepare for a show. I don't have to be that much of a presenter anymore. But yeah, that was very nerve-wracking.
So how did P. Sainath and Kancha Ilayya change your life, your thoughts?
Right. So let me start with Professor Ilayya. Okay. So he's the first one who called me aside, made me aware of what my identity means. Until then, it was one hush-hush thing. Okay. You have the misfortune of having, been, put in this social category, and okay, now everything you have to do from here on forward is to hustle. Professor Ilayya is the first person who was kind enough, he sat me down and he said, do you know where you come from? Do you know what that means? Do you know what happened in Bengal? And these things gave me a perspective on who I am. And in addition to, of course, Professor Ilayya, there was also Chitti Babu and Karthikeyan and Damodaran, like I spoke about them earlier. So these three people in my anti-caste awakening, for starters, I suppose I had to be awake to who I am, right? Before I can be anti-caste and things like that. So in that, I think they played a very big role. And I'm getting goosebumps as I think about that time. Because see, like a lot of us, we live in denial. You want to pass. You don't want to be that person. You don't want to be identified. So you want to borrow, steal identifiers which are not yours, and you want to pass. And that's what I was perhaps trying to do in that event management time, or trying to be this. I wanted to be like a Nikhil Chinnappa or a Cyrus Brocha, and all of that. And to unlearn that and to get into this thing was a very important turning point for my life. I can't stress on that enough. So that happens. And then Sainath. Okay. And in the case of Sainath, I was so taken in by the way he spoke, just the way he could hold the room. And I said, I want to do that. And not just hold the room in the way a Nikhil Chinnappa would, hold the room to account. I think you've attended many Sainath talks, right? He holds people to account. The way he speaks to people, and what I remember most distinctly is some character in my classroom said, "Hamare yahan pe aisa nahi hota," okay, or something like that. He challenged Sainath on some of these social economic realities that he speaks about, and Sainath turned around and he had the confidence to say, "Which district are you from?" The moment the guy mentions the district, he asked him, "Okay, us district mein kahan pe? Are you from this taluk or that taluk, or do you live here or do you live there?" And I just was sitting in awe, saying that this person, can you imagine how much he must have traveled and how much work he must have done to have the confidence to ask that question in a bhari, in a filled up room. That was very impressive. But more than that, the method he used, right? I was obviously realizing very soon that I was not going to be an RJ anymore. So what do I want to be? I suddenly looked at this man and I said, this is probably something I could be, and I could be good perhaps at this. Because I started thinking about what are the things I would need to be like him. I would need strong legs. I would need to learn how to speak to people, to make them comfortable, and I need perhaps to know languages. That's one thing I was confident about. The only thing I knew was I don't have like a good degree. I was a BCom graduate, so it's not like I had sociology.
Please, I was also a BCom graduate. Can you not look down upon BCom graduates? It's the easiest course to pass.
Yes, but I was very insecure in that ACJ course, I remember, because people had come from JNU, from all these central universities with sociology, political science, economics, these are the kind of backgrounds.
But I used to think that's a South Indian thing, that we are always feeling a little diffident.
You think so?
That was my impression of myself in ACJ.
Right.
So now tell me something. You spoke about social identity, and you said that till then you would borrow or steal, and then you would somehow try to pass. But when you were a child or a teenager, did your caste location come into your life in a way that you did not like it?
A little bit of heckling during that Mandal Commission time, because my name. But I really thank again my parents for this. I don't know under what circumstances, parents and my ancestors, that we landed up in the South, Dhanya. Because here no one knows what a Mandal is. They're like, Sudipto, you must be a Bengali, that's all. So I must say that, I was not like, in a way, targeted as I would have perhaps been if I was in a Bengal, I only remember a few instances in this, my mom is a Hindu and, so we would go to this Durga Puja and all of that. There you will see the real colors of these Bengali Bhadralok coming out. They will be like, okay, oh, your father is a Mondal, your mother is a Ghosh. What are you, And you could figure out that there are these cliques that are forming based on surnames. All the Chakrabortis, Banerjees will be hanging around together. All of those things I would notice, but I would not attach too much importance to it, because it is not a source of harassment. Once a year, you land up in that thing, eat your food and get out of there. It happened in journalism for me, because journalism is a place where you have a lot of Bengalis, a lot of people who know what a Mondal means. It is for the first time in ACJ, followed by, of course, the newspapers and all that where I was working.
So, Sudipto, when you say it happened to you in journalism, are you saying there were instances when people would discriminate against you because of your caste? Or one thing that I've noticed is that when a person belongs to a certain caste, especially if they are from a scheduled caste, the work then gets allotted to them in a certain way, right? Or is that what you're talking about?
This is, of course, have a very detailed answer to what you're asking, and I'd rather not go into that detailed answer, and leave it at, there have been a few instances of harassment, but more than that, this experience of being passed over. I take a lot of pride in my work. I have no doubts about my ability, and I would always be left wondering why somebody else would be chosen. And that is not to accuse somebody of discrimination. I suppose it is an indication of what caste realities can leave you with in terms of insecurities. It's quite possible that the person might actually have been better than I am. But because of this, this is something that you're always second guessing yourself, where you're wondering why certain things went a certain way. And of course, since I've spoken about this in somewhere else in public, this is one instance, of course, which stands out, which is the Vemula, post-Rohit Vemula. So I had gone to Hyderabad to report on this thing, and I was there for close to a month or something. And I came back to the Bangalore office, which was my base, and a colleague had taken a doll, a small doll this size, and stuck it into the AC vent just above where I sat. And when I sat, this guy who was sitting next to me, he's like, hey, look up. And I look up, there's this doll stuck. And I said, what about it? And they said, Rohit Vemula. And I said, okay, what's funny about that? There's nothing funny. Ha ha ha, they're laughing. And I said, there's nothing funny about that. What's funny about this? But then I became this guy who is, problematic.
Very angry.
Angry. And this angry guy. Okay, and why can't you take a joke? And stuff like that. It's a great thing, and I once again take the opportunity to thank to three people, who really at these times you need somebody to lean on, and these three people really stood up for me. One of them is Sanjay Narayan, who was the editor-in-chief of the Hindustan Times back then, Nick Dawes, who was the chief editorial officer, and Ruben Banerjee, who was my reporting manager back then. These three people really stood up for me and took that guy to task and all of those things. But I was so shocked, that at that thing, because by then I was not a pushover, no? I was already an established journalist. People knew me and things like that. I didn't expect that somebody would dare to do that to me. And as I processed it more and more, I kept getting more and more agitated or unhappy, when I would reflect on that incident.
So for those watching or listening, we will go into the Rohit Vemula episode and how it impacted your life more. But I want people to read that article, perhaps even pause the interview, read the article and come back. It's called An Unfinished Portrait of Rohit Vemula. And I remember that headline not because I came for the interview today prepared, but that's the headline I always remember. And even at the News Minute, when Sudipto was not working here also, that's one article that I would tell people, go read. Go read for sure. I want to, before we go into Rohit Vemula, I want to ask you, I think I first met you in 2010 or 11. And I really remember how irritating you were.
You too.
Yeah. So basically, there was this one story which both of us were chasing, and we had to chase one woman for that story. So I'm running behind her, and there is another guy also running behind her. So I'm like, who is this other person who figured out this woman's connection to that particular case, right? So that's how I first met Sudipto. But I don't remember you being so, I don't know what word to use, but you putting out your caste identity there at that time. I just knew you as Sudipto Mondal, who was a crime reporter then for The Hindu, right? So in the beginning of your career, though you said that at ACJ you did have an awakening, somehow it did not occur to me that you made that a very important part of identity then.
Yeah, of course. I was working in The Hindu, a vegetarian office. I mean, that's the thing. So I had the pragmatism as a younger person, I suppose, to keep my mouth shut. Where I would just my entire thing, ism, so to speak, for those years, Hindu, HT and all that was, my fight is outside the office. These people are whatever they are, and some of them are progressive, some of them are not, but they don't matter. Okay, and if I get into this office wala galata, I'll never be able to do what I do outside. So my entire focus was to keep office relations very, very cordial, congenial. Someone says something nasty, like in The Hindu, there was this one guy. I don't know whether he used to do it on purpose, but I used to think that he used to do it on purpose. Whenever I am around, he would start talking about how he lost out on his opportunity to become an IAS officer because of reservation, I believe. And I'm like, why am I within earshot every time he's saying this? But my point is that back then, I would avoid these confrontations. I would avoid this thing and all that, So after Rohit Vemula, this incident happened, many other things happened, and of course, when this article that you speak about, this unfinished portrait, when that appeared, a lot of people from the community within the community, people knew who I am. I'd obviously built my networks and, I had friends and things like that. So they started like, hey, he's our guy. And, they kind of celebrated me in that sense for that work I did in Hyderabad. And then I owned it up and all of that. But also it was a way for me to kind of assert, and all of those things is what I was thinking in my head. Eventually what happened because of that is I completely got blocked out of the Indian English journalism space. If it weren't for you, I wouldn't have had a job. Okay, and most editors were like, okay, this guy, if we are getting him, then make him do caste. And I'm like, I've done 101 other things, and why should I be that caste guy, right? So the image that I would often get is of this one frog in this Jataka tales. There's this one story, this pond is drying out, and this frog is dying because there's no water, and these two cranes come to help the frog, saying that we'll hold a stick between our legs and you just latch onto the stick and we'll take you to a pond with water. Only thing, don't open your mouth, And literally that is the imagery I always kind of, get when I think about what I did wrong strategically, which is that I could have still been doing all of this work, but I shouldn't have, put myself out there as this guy who's, out, because it came at a huge cost.
So you're saying from being pragmatic at some level, then you started being more vocal, which turned a lot of people against you.
Oh, yeah.
But The Hindu also, you had, I guess, very good editors, because some of your best work also came during the Hindu times, right?
Of course. I mean, so there was Parvati Menon. Okay, my God, I had this massive intellectual crush on her, because of all the work she had done. She'd worked in Frontline, the way she would break down an issue, and fit it into a 400-word article. I learned so much from her. There was Sugandhi Ravindranathan, who was my city editor. Fantastic feminist woman, blazing guns all the time, and some of the very basic lessons which you keep trying to, these values that you try to instill in young reporters. So she instilled those in me, which is fine. Ideology, you read Marx, Foucault, all that, okay. Were you on the spot? Did you see this happen? This commitment to facts, truth. How do you put out truth in a way which is not just believable? How do I put it? Like, you can establish truth. How do you establish that something is true and all of that? These are things I think Sugandhi helped me learn to a great extent. Dakshinamurthy used to be an editorial consultant. I've learned so much from him. How do you, the aesthetics of headline, strapline, lead, all these things. So I had fantastic. V. Sridhar writes on business and economy. So these people really, I owe a lot of my knowledge, whatever, competence, whatever.
When you look back, what are the stories which you really are proud of from the Hindu times?
So the proudest is definitely the first big story that I did was I landed up in Mangalore. I wanted to be a district reporter, right? So they sent me away to Mangalore. And for the first time I realized, because people would say, what would you go and do in a district? You don't even know the people there. And do you know Tulu? No. Do you know Konkani? No. Do you know Bihari? No. What are you going to do there and all that? Because everybody who works in Mangalore is local only. And I am this Bengali guy, twice removed, landed up in this place. But, I could see things that they couldn't see, Dhanya. Like at 9 o'clock in the morning, 10 o'clock in the morning, one boy and girl are pulled out of a bus and beaten up. Okay, and I'm standing there on my bike waiting in that signal and watching this scene. And then nothing happens. Everyone's going back to work. And I thought initially there's some road rage incident. It's later I discovered it's some Hindu girl, Muslim boy, love jihad, this, that, vigilantism and all that. No paper is covering it. If there is somebody covering it, they're covering only the salacious aspects. This boyfriend, girlfriend were traveling in a bus and the people taught them Indian culture. That would be the kind of reporting.
But why did you choose Mangalore?
I didn't choose Mangalore. There was one person who was posted in Mangalore who was highly communal and corrupt, and they desperately needed to replace him. And so they sent another person I failed to mention who really taught me a lot, Govind Belgaonkar. So they sent Govind Belgaonkar as the city chief for Mangalore, and along with him they sent me to ensure, because whatever said and done, Enram was a progressive person, Parvati and all these people, we were a non-communal leadership at least. So they were very disturbed by the kind of very mediocre reporting or like almost communal reporting that was happening by Hindu reporters in Mangalore. So that's why they sent me in there. I was supposed to go to Bidar actually. I wanted to cover. So Sainath is my motivation, right? So he's my hero, and I want to be that kind of reporter. So where do I go looking for those kind of stories? North Karnataka, because that's where the farm distress is. And then I get sent away here. And as an outsider, I found this shocking. I went back to the office and my office people are not very perturbed. This happens. I said, boss, this is big. Then I went, and I loved the methodology that went into it. Okay, so what I did is, I went on a bike ride to every police station in the district, Dhanya. Okay, in that Dakshin Kannada district. And I would go and ask them for the station register. Okay, in the station register, these entries would be made. Because these boys and girls, these cases, they would drag them to the police station. They would get their parents, this Bajrang Dal, Shriram Sena, whoever, they would do all this rubbish, okay? And so I would not find any evidence that this actually happened, except say one yellow paper which has celebrated this event, okay? I would not have any evidence. So then I discovered that, okay, FIR has not been booked, but there's this station register, where the cases are there. So I went, got those cases. In those case registers, I found the numbers of the survivors, spoke to the survivors, got their version, suddenly had a big story, which is that in the last X number of days, this many attacks have happened on inter-community couples.
That's great. Imagine reporters don't go to one police station now. You went to all the police stations in Dakshina Kannada.
Sugandhi ma'am put that in my head. She kicked me into becoming this guy.
But did you learn any Tulu finally?
Yeah, Tulu varpundi enake.
I know one word in Tulu. Marlundu. Means you're mad.
Which is you're mad, yeah.
Yeah, I know that word. I mean, I know a couple of other words, but I can't say that, yeah.
Okay. No, I think I how do I say? I mean, I think I endeared myself to a lot of people in Mangalore. Even today, I'm received very warmly when I go back there. And one of the things I think they like about me is that I picked up their language. I speak to them in Tulu, so yeah, it's...
But did Mangalore reporting also tell you that sometimes when an outsider comes to a place, there's a perspective that they bring, and which will like I sometimes feel we become cynical as journalists, right? Like you cover one atrocity, you cover two, you cover three and fourth, you're like, So I keep telling people that the moment you stop feeling angry, sad or upset, you have to leave this job, because then you are acting like a stenographer, taking down details and reproducing it. You don't have any emotions, you don't have any perspective, and therefore you are not giving your best for that story.
Yeah, and it's so important what you're saying, because of how certain things that we focus on are repeating so rapidly, no? Whatever, you look at the stuff that we did for the Kerala, the film industry. It's not like anything has improved. I mean, some of the horror stories we were discussing last time only, right? Like things are still there, and that means that for the next few years, probably we're going to keep coming up with stories like this actor assault case in the Dalit and all that. Look at atrocities and what are Tamil Nadu bureaus. Every second day there's an atrocity case from there. I really hope we don't become jaded, no?
No, we can't afford to become, right?
Can't afford to, but I'm afraid that we might, because after all, we are like, humans, and how deep
then
is our
we will
well
all
of passion?
become techies or bank jobs. I mean, not to look down upon any of them, but I just feel that's a little bit more easier because you don't have to put emotions. But Sudip, I want to just continue. You said you were
But can
proud
I
of,
quickly say, but I'm afraid of that, but I'm also very surprised at how deep this well is, of our outrage or passion or whatever. And I'm not saying this in a self-congratulatory way. I'm genuinely surprised at how I'm still able to feel for these things. And I see you, I see Pooja, I see Shabir, Azifa, Harita, and I want to give a shout out to our reporters. Look at Anjana, the kind of thing that they are doing, similar stories again and again and again, but the gusto, the zest with which they go at it every time, it amazes me. Yeah, sorry.
No problem. So you talked about the Mangalore stories, but I remember a story which you did about the Prime Minister's office, which is Manmohan Singh's office then, which had created a lot of flutter, right?
Yeah.
What was the story?
So that was basically the Tatra truck scam was happening. Everyone is talking about it, but nobody could establish the money trail. If you are going to say that there has been a bad deal, it could go two ways, right? Which is oversight or malice. Oversight is pardonable. Oh, we didn't know. And all. Malice, which is like there is actually a conspiracy to defraud the exchequer and all that. So how do you establish that? We were looking. And this source came out of who you also know from Vemula. And he gave this small hint saying that the kickbacks have come not in the form of cash or anything like that. It's come in the form of plots. And the moment that I realized that, I said, boss, this is something I know very well. Because by then, if you remember, you and I again, a lot of us, we were reporting on Yedurappa's land scams and these DK Shivakumars of the world and all of that. We were reporting back in 2009, 11-ish, those years. So I said, I know that this land thing very well and all that. So then I started digging. I found that the niece of, somebody who's an advisor to the Prime Minister had been allotted plots and all of that. And again, I want to, this will be a good example to tell you why I have so much respect for people like Parvati, which is, so I found out that here's a sale deed. It says some Preeti Prabha, if I'm not wrong, her name was Preeti Prabha. And she has got a plot, 100 by 100 or some very expensive plot. And I came back running to the office. I got the document, sale deed and all that. And Parvati asked me a simple question. How can you prove that Preeti Prabha is the secretary's niece? No, my source told me. I said, no, that's not good enough. I said, then what do you want me to do? Ration card, this thing. I said, what? Ration card doesn't have... And I said, well, then she's like, there's no story then. How do you say that she's his niece? I said, no, ma'am, but I know it's... Sudipto, how do you establish this, okay? I was like, honestly, back then, in that moment, I was angry with her, okay? I've gone all over, I've got this document and look at this. And it's so mean and so cheap, okay? So I started thinking, that, they must have done some adjustment. They don't want to publish the story and all of that. But she just wouldn't let me have it. And I said, okay, what do I do? Suddenly I had this idea, let's just land up at the address. So I went off to Preeti Prabha's house, knocked on the door. Her mother comes out. I said, ma'am, Preeti, I hope the name is correct. Anyway, is Preeti home? And she's like, yeah. And Preeti comes out and I'm like, are you some Nair? Are you his niece? Yeah. Did you get this plot allotted on this day to you? Yeah. Why were you allotted that plot? You're not a BEML employee. She looks at me like that. And that moment I was like, that's my story. I got that. And I
But,
came
but
back.
ground reporting is such an important part, right? Which I feel is becoming lesser and lesser. In fact, one of your crazier copies, I'm just remembering it now. I think after you joined the News Minute, I was showing a few copies to everybody as to how Sudipto used to be reporting. And I came across this Hindu copy of yours where there is some encroachment of land. And you have actually gone with a measuring tape and you have measured that land, and it's written in the Hindu, our correspondent Sudipto Mondal measured the land.
Yeah, what else do you do? It's common sense. No. Firstly,
Do you think a lot of reporters are taking tapes and measuring land? But people
those
don't
who are
do.
desperate to get the truth, I don't know. Okay, again, I may sound like somebody who's like blowing my own trumpet, but I was really desperate to get those stories out. It used to give me this sense of like, this, we are this diminutive nobodies, and there are these mountainous characters, but we can really bring the mountain down, tumbling, that.
But Sudipto, when you did that story, for example, on the PMO itself, today there's a sense of fear, I think, among journalists, right? I feel that fear was absent among a lot of us back then. First, that we never thought even a PMO is bigger than the media itself, right? That they could come behind us, and that the organization would stand with us. That was also some courage that most of us had, I feel.
Organization standing with us wasn't happening then also. Like, my judge's story, right? Enram just didn't give me an explanation for why he's killing the stories. Okay?
No, but I'm saying generally we
but
all
then
had that feeling.
We had that feeling, of course. And the thing was, I know how to say this, but it'll be unfair not to say this, which is that they ran a more decent government, back then. And I'm saying this with so many caveats because I'm no Congress fan. If you ask me what my ism is, it's definitely not Congressism, But those looked like, in hindsight, like gentlemen and, decent women, and it was not, that's the thing, because we could write stuff about them and we knew that, okay, so what happens? I blast this story and that became like one of those final nails on Manmohan Singh's coffin, and, because this is anti-corruption air and all of that. TK Nair, his principal secretary, he calls me and I'm shivering, okay, because I've tried to call him for days leading up to that expose. He's not taken my call and all that. After the story appears, phone is ringing, who's it? TK Nair. Okay, because I'm like, it could be a threat, it could be this, it could be some blackmail. And I'm thinking, what have I done? How will they catch me? Because this is the government, right? All he said was, and I said, hello sir, do you want to react now? Do you want to give me a reaction? No. I said, but why have you called? Simply. I said, what do you want? Nothing. I said, but what? No, good story. He just said, good story, Dhanya. And okay, he could have been saying it sarcastically, whatever. But if you go by the transcript of that conversation, he just said, good story, right? And after that, I never heard from him. He never, of course, heard from me. Those are different times.
Yeah, those were different times. Now, let's move the chat forward to Rohit Vemula's death. You landed up in Hyderabad. And how did that entire episode not just change you as a journalist, but as a person itself? I know there's a lot to talk about, but let's try to at least get into that conversation.
It created waves of change in me. Okay, the first wave was this hero. Oh, Rohit Vemula. The second wave was, no, not such a hero after all. Because is this what I want young people to take as an example, which is write a great letter and go? No. Okay, then radicalism. There was this phase where I felt very, compelled to take radical positions. And then suddenly you realize that this is banging your head against the wall. Then some pragmatism, then you realize that, these are all games in your head and that you're absolutely insignificant. I suppose the greatest thing for me after Rohit Vemula was to come to terms with my own insignificance. Because until then I was a star reporter, everywhere I go people recognize me, all of that was happening, right? And I took that for granted, saying that, I'm somebody who matters, And when I, came out, when I started doing these things, is when I realized how absolutely pointless my life is in that sense. I'm not saying that my life has no value, but I definitely felt like, I'm nobody, and that was a very fantastic realization because from there I started growing again, therefore it was very important for me to come completely crashing down. And this crashing down was not just a thing of, oh, my career has gone for a toss, my life has gone for a toss, friends who I thought people who I thought were friends stopped taking your phone calls, all that is one thing. but what the movement was going through at the same time, what Rohit Vemula's family was going through at the same time, with whom I was spending time endlessly, the students at HCU, the students at JNU, Dalits pretty much everywhere in the country, and there was a phase which I couldn't distinguish between, whether I'm a journalist or an activist or what am I doing here. Suddenly I'm sitting in Una giving advice and strategic inputs to some people who want to take a yatra because of that flogging incident. Suddenly I'm sitting in some this thing. So it was a very fuzzy time, but it was a time of great learning. It's a time of great pain, and nothing teaches you like pain. So I wouldn't trade that experience in for anything else. It was the most formative period of my life, this 8 years.
But do you think that Rohit Vemula's death was also formative for the Indian media in one way?
Yeah.
Before that, there was, I think, a shroud of silence, right, when it came to caste-related issues. In fact, in all the years that I work for TV channels, I can't even remember one time that I've looked at a caste atrocity or anything as it is. We would report very few times. But do you feel it was changing the media also?
So Rohit Vemula was the epitome of that consciousness, which is that it just came onto the surface like that. But if you remember, Dhanya, this Roundtable India, these social media platforms.
No, I'm talking about the mainstream media.
No, I'm saying these platforms had already started making waves. So that Arundhati Roy incident had already happened, in which they accused her of appropriation when she brought out that book. That was before Rohit Vemula. What happened, I think, is that some amount of this social media gave an amplifier to a lot of people who were voiceless until then, because the mainstream media was ignoring them. And they created pressure on the mainstream media to start commissioning these kind of stories. So Rohit Vemula became such a big issue. Why? Because first it exploded on social media, right? My Hyderabad reporter was a Sanghi in the Hindustan Times when I was working. He was a Sanghi fellow, and he didn't want to give it the kind of coverage that it deserved. It is only because of the social media explosion that thousands of people landed up on the campus to protest, but millions of people across the world discovered that there was a guy called Rohit Vemula, and all of that. So I think that was a huge course correction, a reason for the course correction. The fact that you couldn't be ostrich, and get away with it anymore.
But within the media, Sudipto, how did Dalit reporters react? As in, did they also feel it is a time to band together? Or did people feel that it's still too dangerous, even within their own community, to identify themselves? As you said, come out.
Yeah, so I was the only fool who did that. And perhaps Yashika. Luckily, Yashika was in the US. So in the US, they can't tell one brown person from another, I suppose. But that is one very, good that a lot of my friends didn't do something as reckless. Banding together makes you feel like you're part of a conspiracy against something very powerful. It's almost scary. What I can say about...
But it is, right?
It is, because you're literally trying not to think and analyze things so much. Because you're also trying to, at one point, hold a job down. So a lot of my friends who are from the community in the industry, and they did advise me, in fact, saying that I think you're going a little overboard, and
No, but when I say, I'll rephrase it, when I say banding together, I don't sort of mean that you form some secret WhatsApp group to sort of devise and plan. What I meant is that within organizations, like where you worked, you felt like I need to make sure that there is more writing, or did people feel there's a pressure on them that this has to be spoken about more? Or was there realization there even without these reporters pushing for it?
So these reporters, some of them, actually did the opposite. They didn't push for it. In fact, when this great so-called awakening happened among Savarnas, saying that, there's something called caste, left-oriented, Savarnas who would suddenly say, we have to focus on caste. It was a scary time for a lot of my friends, because scary and slightly irritating also. Because it's like, typically, right, when you see a young reporter jumping for some stupid story, which has been reported 10 times, 100 times, you will tell them, right, hey, chill out, like this has been done. This thing. So for them, at one level, they were feeling like, man, why are they waking up to something like this, which is so omnipresent, and acting like, there's a big discovery. And why are the audiences also responding in such a way that this is some big discovery and all of that. So there was a sense of irritation, definitely. But they also felt scared and vulnerable, saying that, does this now mean, okay, so now the editor has become woke. Does this now mean that he's going to start patronizing me? Does this mean now that, yes, in the past I would fight to do stories on caste, but now will the opposite start happening, which is that they will catch me, pull me out of a line and say, hey, you go do that caste story. These are the kind of anxieties that my friends have shared with me, when this great Savarna awakening was happening. Yeah.
But has that Savarna awakening little bit slowed down now? I feel like...
Yeah, it's out of fashion, no, over. They proved themselves, they've they've done that funky chicken and they've moved on. And now if somebody asks them, oh, what is this, what is that, they will just refer to their pieces from 2017, 18, 20, 21, saying that I have done my caste reporting, now I'm moving on.
But how do you think a newsroom has to be invested? What would you say would be the right way to do it?
I don't think there are easy answers, Dhanya, because, and I think we have to have firstly honest conversations, which is that this very simple thing, and it is something that we have repeatedly talked about, which is, do you hire Dalits, Adivasis, Muslims, women so that they can write on Dalits, Adivasis, Muslim women, or so that they can reclaim their humanity, so that they can reclaim, or so that they can lay claim to being a storyteller? We have suffered or struggled with this in this organization as well, which is at one level you have somebody who will say that, why the hell should I do this story? And, stupidly I would say that, why don't you feel for it? And it's a little insensitive, you to say that, you should feel for this because you are a woman. How can you not feel for this?
Or because you're a Dalit, or because you're a Muslim.
Yeah. So that is definitely one set of things. So therefore, I think we should embrace being wrong a little more and not necessarily deal with imperfections as cardinal sins. We have done that. It was important to do that at a certain time because certain things needed calling out, right? But I think now we have to be a little less doctrinal, a little less strident, and a little slower to get into yes and no positions. And I say this as a person who has now been editing in News Minute for some time. I'm increasingly unable to say yes or no on questions of gender, sexuality, caste, patriarchy. All of these things are evolving. I think if we are on our toes, if we are light on our feet, we'll be fine. But I don't think we should try to do always the right thing. As long as you're doing it honestly, we follow the journalistic principles, I think we are fine. I don't know if that is an entire answer. It's still a confusing thing for me to consider. I don't know the exact answer to this.
So would you say that pre-Rohit Vemula Sudipto Mondal is very different from the post-Rohit Vemula Sudipto Mondal?
Yes, of course. Of course.
How?
Pre-Rohit, I was... as a person, I think I was a lot more jolly. I think I was a lot more fun to be around. And now it's not like I don't seek popularity, which is a great thing also in a way. I mean, I
but
think
why did you think you're a fun person then and not now?
Because back then I made a great effort to put people at ease, I don't anymore, at least not in these kind of settings, in political settings, professional settings and all that. I don't do that much. How else have I changed?
You said personally.
Personally, I've changed like this, I suppose. Professionally, yeah. So Rohit was a great writer, okay. And after I read his letter, until then I thought of myself as a reporter, okay. And I took pride in that things, in that we tuck, staccato, put the facts out and all that. The letter, I think, and then I started reading his other stuff and all that. I said, wow, what a writer, what a writer, what a writer. And for the first time, I started, in my life, I had this desire to be a writer, that to write well and to try and indulge in the aesthetics of writing. Because in a newspaper, where's the aesthetics? In 300 words, you finish something. There's no aesthetics, right? So I was like, if I can write like this guy, and I was so happy this unfinished portrait and things like that. I was very happy with the writing, if you'll allow me to say this. Because until then, I've not written any piece which had any literary quality or anything of that sort.
Yeah, I was actually shocked reading that, saying, this is the same Sudipto?
Yeah, I think I've invested very heavily on trying to write better. I don't know if I do that, but yeah.
Just diverting a bit away from your life as such, but how is it for the Vemula family now?
Vemula family now, well, I am very happy and to share that, Raja Vemula, who...
Rohit's brother.
Who was a geologist by training when Rohit passed. And he was again, I think he was a gold medalist or something. He was very good at his studies and very good at work. But he had to drop out of that whole thing. And he, for the longest time, so he started driving an auto. Radhika went back to doing masalas and tailoring and all of that. I can say that now at least things are not that bad. Now she tailors because she loves it. And she's very good, I still need to get something done through her. I love her embroidery and her, what do you call it? What skills are those called?
Since I don't have any of it, I'm sure I cannot name them.
I love it. I mean, my mom also taught me embroidery and all that. So that's one of the things. So I want to go and do that. But she's doing a lot better than she was in those years. And that large reason for that is that Raja has now found a decent job. So they have settled somewhat. The trauma that they carry is one thing I can definitely share is that it is not just of Rohit's passing. Now that they have gone through different parts of the country, seen different movements and things like that, I think they carry a very deep trauma about the state of progressive movements in the country. Because yes, the BJP is very strong. Yes, fascism, if you want to call it that, is in the air and all of that. But progressive forces have really let themselves down, through their own contradictions, through the fact that, the same things, which we accuse the BJP or the Sangha of, which is which also plays a role in progressive politics, which is men are a problem, Savarnas are a problem, urban people are a problem, and their presence in these progressive circles, I think, has contributed a great deal to their insignificance. To the fact that these progressivisms don't have that cutting edge is because, I don't want to take names, hopefully I'll have them in the show and ask them about their contradictions. But I think one of the great pains that Radhika and Raja carry is this realization that it's not all rosy. Because see, you must understand, when they came to the campus, they were very reluctant. They just wanted the body and they wanted to go home. They saw these 10, 15, 20,000 people shouting Rohit's name, invoking Ambedkar. It sounded like the revolution is here. It has landed, So they were very inspired by that. And instead of going back home with the body, they plunged themselves into the movement. And they went all over the country only to realize that, there are so many holes in these movements. I think that's a great pain that they carry. I hope I'm not speaking on their behalf, and if there's an opportunity, I think they should speak about it. But yeah.
So, okay, we have looked at your career graph for so long. Now, Sudipto, how do you look at your journalism forward? I mean, if you want to be a journalist and not go back to RJing, etc., but how would you want to define your journalism forward?
Okay, first and foremost, I need to listen to my two most important mentors, which is Pooja and Dhanya. And one of the things that you've been pushing me to do is write at least once in 3 months. So
write once in a year.
That I didn't know.
3 months.
That I didn't know.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, I want to write more, and I do want to look at more South Asia as opposed to India. Because if now this, I know that, now I'm too deep in this, caste studies kind of space. Everything I see it through that lens. And I think that that lens is not something that is to be applied only to this Indian context. It's a South Asian thing. I am very keen to look at what's happening in Bangladesh. I am very keen to look at what's happening in North Sri Lanka. I am definitely very interested to look at places like the Northwestern Frontier Province, the tribal areas, Balochistan, these places. I don't know if I'll ever get to travel there and report, but whatever. These are my...
As Abhinandan says, some NL fund or the other.
Some NL fund or the other, but these are my abiding curiosities. I think this is what I'm going to try and explore. If I can't go there, at least I'll read about that. But that's my big thing that I want to learn about from here on forward. Because journalism is what? Journalism is not a subject. Journalism is a subject, is something that allows you to learn about subjects. And so therefore, I want to be able to use journalism to learn more and more about these.
Something else that you say about journalism always, which strikes me as powerful, is that we are always recording things for posterity, right? To all those people who keep saying, why are you reporting this? Why are you reporting that? But that's also something that you have followed throughout, right? That we have to record some things for posterity.
Yeah. That message in a bottle, no? Which, finds...
Explain.
Message in a bottle, you basically put a little note in a bottle and you cast it out to sea, and you never know when it's going to find shore. And when it does is when, that message is rediscovered. And I think journalism has that ability that it like for example, right now, I don't want to take her name. There's a very special guest who I'm getting, I'm going through archives from the 70s of things that she had written. And that gives me hope that, when somebody would be looking at the noughties, or whatever, they would be, going through all of this, and trying to find out what this time is all about. And first draft of history, no? What do you call it? Yeah.
But are we really the first draft of history now? Because we are such a polarized country and our journalism is so polarized. I now really doubt that we could be called the first draft of history. Not all work, but 90% of work.
Oh, but of course, and it's for good reason that it's called the first draft, because it's pretty mediocre. It's not very, it doesn't qualify as pure history, so it is still first draft of history. But I think that somebody like you, Dhanya, I don't want to make you embarrassed or whatever, but somebody like you will be remembered for generations. And
I
what
hope
you have,
so.
no, absolutely, because what you have done in these last 10 years came at that very crucial juncture where truth was something that supposedly everybody had. Everybody had something called locational truth, and all of that. And then to tie that flying tent and peg it down, in the South particularly, where it is unfortunate that the South needed a news minute. Let me say that also, because the South has a history of supposedly fantastic legacy publications. Why was there a need for a news minute? And that, I think, shows the mirror to a lot of these publications out here who mask themselves with some progressive thing, but they are anything but that. So what happened in between 2010 and if they don't shut us down, hopefully we'll last for another 50 years.
I'll be dead by then.
You're dead by then, but hopefully
Yeah.
this place will last.
Yeah.
And we'll have...
That's something I've never thought about, like the future. I'm not a future person at all.
Yeah. No, I can't help but think about the future because I'm so invested in the past. I don't know. So much of history reading I do and all of that, I just feel like...
No, I'm not intrigued by what happens to me or the organization. I feel like just give it your best now. You can't keep thinking about what... Like sometimes when we even get an investor on board, people say, but you're giving away shares. You're giving away your ownership. I'm like, what will I do with it? Boil and eat it? Like there's absolutely no use of this, right? Unless I get money to at least run this now. So my final question to Sudipto. Why did you start What's Your Ism? Other than, of course, us asking you have to start a show and Abhinandan Sekri doing all the training and stuff. What is the actual purpose of What's Your Ism?
To find the answers to some of those questions for which I've not found answers in the course of the last 8 years. This is all post-Rohit Vemula only. And I think I've said this also in one of my shows earlier, which is that, yes, of course, it was a great learning experience. I discovered all these new ideological positions, these groups, these political parties, this thing. But, there were more questions than there were answers, Dhanya. And I think this is very fulfilling for me because of that. Because I'm able to ask those questions to which I don't think I have steady answers. In the beginning, of course, there was a bit of vanity also, let's even say, where I felt like, I will ask the questions and, they will answer. I will point their contradictions and things like that. But very quickly I realized that, it is a learning experience for me also, to realize that there are no steady answers, because one of the things that you expect out of ideologies is that it will give you some golden answer. And what you realize in the end of the day is the ideology is like a car. In the end of the day, it's about who's driving it. You could be driving anything, and if you drive it badly. So those things, I think, are the thoughts behind What's Your Ism.
Okay, so we will keep watching What's Your Ism next year. To everyone joining, so that was a special episode where we had Sudipto on the hot seat. Remember that this is a show which needs your help, just like the News Minute does. This is a holiday season. You're going to be spending a lot on holidays and food and stuff. But spare a bit, take a subscription, because that's your way of saying, I stand with Indian democracy and I stand with good journalism. Thank you for joining us on this episode of What's Your Ism.
Thank you.